Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Dusty Trails and Tall Tales podcast. I'm your host, Matthew, and today we're excited to welcome back a guest whose first appearance quickly became one of our most watched episodes. Joining us once again is Joanne Fralick, award-winning author of the Courneya Brothers trilogy. Her previous book, Rustlers, Renegades, and Rogues, not only captivated readers but also earned the Literary Titan Book Award for excellence in historical fiction. Today we'll be talking about her new release, diving into her genealogical discoveries and the enduring legacy of the Old West. Joanne, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm glad to be here.
Yep. Always glad to catch up with you, see what's been going on. But tell us about your new book. What's the story about?
Well, it's been a long journey. It's the conclusion of the Courneya Brothers trilogy. Rustler's Ruin takes the story from where it left off in book two at the death of Jack Sully, and continues on through the aftermath of the Courneya Brothers and how it affected them and how it affected the gang, the changing times, cultural changes to the Old West, and through to the end of life of that chapter of the family.
Well, does it expand or depart on any of the themes from your first two books?
Not doesn't really it expands. It doesn't depart. I'm trying to keep it faithful to the core, which is the family, the
Yeah.
native family, and what it does for the most part is it shows that their old way of life just keeps getting pushed back, getting pushed out. Um, Started getting pushed out with the destruction of the buffalo, then reserves, then the great settlement of the West, the great push west, again unsettled them, and technology caught up to them. Um, and it's just kind of a tale of how things changed, whether you want them to or not. Change happens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Were there any characters that surprised you as you
Um,
wrote?
yes. I expanded on and used Jack Sully's widow more than I thought I would, and I tried to bring Mary Sully to life. What helped with that huge was between the time of writing the second book and the last book, I was introduced to Jack's own great granddaughter, Shannon. And Shannon was a wealth of information on the family, put to rest a lot of myths and false rumors that were popular at the time. Um, Gave me some insight into the family and how the circumstances were, why they were the way they were. Um, Told me that Jack and his partner that originally came to South Dakota actually served in on the Union side in the Civil War.
Oh,
So I've dug into that a little bit for maybe another project. Um, as far as the actual Courneya brothers themselves, it is it was recorded in the old newspapers, pretty much what happened to them, particularly the youngest of the three, Philip. His story is fairly well known, and I of course did expand on it and made it more than the clipping in the newspaper that it was, because frankly, back the way it was written in the newspaper was very insulting. Um, very how would you say, uh, the word escapes me, but as far it was very disrespectful of the Native American culture, put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and that's that I'd say Mary Sully. I expanded on Mary a lot more than I thought I did. She Shannon told me that Mary actually did a lot in the background that nobody knows about, so that gave me some leeway to kind of make her more of a stronger character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which it should be, because the matriarchal character, the matriarch was very important in, and still is very important in Native American society.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are there any historical figures or events in this book that readers might recognize?
Yes, the land rushes. You probably will, if you're any of a student of the West at all. You'd be familiar with the land rushes when they opened up the prairies to settlers. And in particular, there was a major land rush in Bone Steel, which is in the southeastern part of South Dakota, I believe. It's west of the river, anyway. Um, and it was huge. They had an encampment of 50,000 people waiting for the drawing for the land. And that I expanded on a lot, because there was so much that could go on while um, the settlers were there waiting for their drawing. I mean, can you imagine a sea of humanity of 50,000 strangers, all in this one encampment outside of town? A lot of them had everything that they owned with them. There were families, there were single people, there were speculators. And of course, all these people were ripe for the picking, because there were a lot of naive people. So you had your gamblers, your thieves, your con artists, prostitutes, um, a microcosm of everything that was going on in the old West back then.
Yeah. Well, how does this book wrap up the story? Is it happily ever after, or how does it end?
It's realistic. What I will say is that it's realistic. The journey of this family was a journey of is a journey that many, unfortunately, Native Americans experienced in that time period. They happily, I wouldn't call it happily ever after. It would be they ended up being a situation of their time. Um, at the point that it ends, it's excuse me. It actually ends in the 1960s. It goes all the way up to the 1960s.
Oh,
Yeah. The last brother passed in 67. Uh, and at that point, there wasn't the recognition and the respect that is starting to be shown to the indigenous was not happening. That hadn't happened yet. The indigenous were at a very rough crossroads at that point in time. They pretty much had no rights. They didn't have a lot of educational opportunities. They were impoverished because they were on the reserves, distrustful of the education system because of all the abuses, which were still going on in the 60s. Um, and so the ending of the book is kind of open. It's kind of doesn't really point in a happily ever after direction. Well, it doesn't point in a happily ever after direction. It's we know how things turned out, because we're in the 2000s now, and hopefully things are getting a little better. We're getting a little more aware of things that we can do better, and we can do a lot better. um, but at that point in time, not really.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say basically it's a realistic glimpse of how things were perceived from the Native American perspective at the time.
Okay.
Um, Wounded Knee had happened, of course. I don't believe the takeover. There was a second takeover. There was a standoff at Wounded Knee in the late '60s, or I might excuse me for not remembering exactly the date. If it was late '60s or early '70s, but that hadn't happened yet. The end of the book is just before that happened. Okay.
Huh. Was there any historical controversies or anything specific that you tried to highlight in this
Um,
overall series?
Overall, in the series,
Yeah.
the overall story arc is family. The
Okay.
family and how the family sticks together and how the family um it's your classic ride or die.
Yeah.
Um and how the family, like I say, sticks together, respects each other, does their best to maintain their connections, um help each other. Helping each other is a big part of uh of the book. Um but yeah, and the changing times is also an over the changing of the advance of technology and the changing times is a big part of it too, because the things go from it being pretty out open and free to excuse me, um to the family, to the natives getting placed on reservations, which reduce change their lifestyle, reduce their freedom. um Basically the school system, the conformity that they were forced into, and the loss of their old ways, the loss of their language, um, and the cultural disparity between the white culture, the white eastern culture that came west,
Hmm.
and their culture that was already there, that wasn't recognized as a culture.
Yeah. Were there any new locations that you visited doing research?
For the third book, there were places I wanted to go, but wasn't able to, unfortunately. I would love to have seen Leavenworth, because the brothers did 2 terms in Leavenworth, but
Yeah.
I did have an expert to help me navigate that. His name was Ken, and Kenneth Lemaster. He is a former um, excuse me, a former guard from Leavenworth. He's retired. He spent quite a number of years there. Then after he retired, he became their historian,
Hmm.
and he was able to tell me a lot. I really really appreciated his help, because he wasn't afraid to tell it like it was.
Yeah.
Terrible things happened in there, and it was. It was eye opening. It was, and I was able to work that into the story and work the characters around it. Um, Actually, for the second term that they were in there, the Birdman of Alcatraz was in there at the same time,
Yeah.
and he committed a murder in the lunchroom, the
Wow.
dining hall. He murdered a guard, and they most likely would have been present in that room when that happened. That's what got him sent to Alcatraz.
Huh.
So, and it was highly likely that they were in that dining hall minding their own business when that happened. So I worked that in.
That's cool.
Speculation, but hey,
Yeah.
that's what writing's all about.
That's one of the privileges of writing fiction.
Exactly, exactly.
How has your writing process evolved over time? as you've written the series?
I think it's got smoother as I got more familiar with the genre and the terminology and the style. Helped that I read, because of course I'm always reading and always learning more about the Western culture. Um, I think it's actually getting. I will say it's getting easier because I'm starting to understand more of the way things worked back then. Um, you were talking about places. One of the places that we did go to that I did go to that I absolutely loved, that was a huge help because it actually gave me hands-on opportunity to see what the buildings were like, was this little place called 1880s Town near Murdo in South
Wow,
Dakota. And they shot some scenes from Dances with Wolves there. And it was great because they had like a period jail, they had a period newspaper office, a period saloon with the brothel above and all decorated out.
cool.
And it helped me understand about what these places looked like and how they would have functioned and how the people that worked there would have functioned within that space.
That's
um,
good.
mhm.
I've got a question from Mike
Yes.
about your writing.
Yes.
How has your writing grown since you first began publishing? What improvements do you see from your earlier work?
I'm getting a lot better at editing. A lot better at editing. Yeah, yeah. It's coming. It's coming. The editing is coming along really good now. Um, Consistency.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. My characters are more consistent. I'm finding less times that wait a minute, he wouldn't have said that, or he wouldn't have been there at that time. That's not happening as much
yeah,
now. So it's getting, the whole process is getting smoother. I won't say formulaic. It's definitely not getting. Definitely not coming down to formula writing.
yeah,
I still like to think that each book is can kind of stand on its own and give you a good story.
yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I see another question I've got here. How is the genre coming along? How do I see the genre coming along today, and what do I see in the future? Well, I
Yeah.
just saw online. Like I'm in Eastern Ontario, Canada, in a community of maybe my whole county has 25,000, 30,000 people in it, and somebody's filming a western
Huh.
about 30 miles north of here.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, people are still want westerns. People are still interested in them. We had a huge glut there a little while ago with Yellowstone and all the spin-offs. I think people are kind of done with that now. I think
Yeah,
it's been everything that it can be, and it was great. Um, what I would like to see in the future is, when it comes to maybe Hollywood or TV or in general, is to give lesser known authors an opportunity, because there's some great stories out there that weren't written by like Louis L'Amour.
yeah,
There's a lot of great stories out there, and I think some of these authors, ideally what I'd like to see is, I mean, there's so many personal individual unique niche channels on like Spotify and on YouTube and all that. I'd love to see one dedicated to the Western. Um,
yeah,
like even acting short stories or something like that. And I think there's plenty of opportunity for that. People still like the Western. People listen to country music. I mean, that's core. We've got a bull riding virtually in my neighborhood every weekend, and that's
wow.
in Canada. It's yeah, it's people like it. I've never understood the stigma of Western being low class.
Yeah, I
It's
haven't
not.
either.
It's not. Yeah.
No,
Okay. Mhm.
it's the one literary genre that's uniquely American.
Absolutely, yes. But it has a huge following in some parts of Europe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A
But
lot
yeah,
of us.
it's one of the few it's the genre that you can we can claim as our own.
Yeah.
Absolutely uniquely our own. Excuse me.
Which character of yours is your favorite of all time?
Ooh. Oh, I'd have to say Phil, the youngest brother. I had a lot of fun writing Phil.
Why is that?
Phil got into a lot of trouble. Phil was a womanizer. He was a hothead and a bit of a gambler, yeah. Claude was more of the gambler. Claude had a physical handicap that prevented him from doing some of the stuff that the other two did. Um, and so he was the thinker. And he was the camp cook. At least that's the way I projected him. But Phil was a fun character to work with because he could go from zero to I'm going to shoot you between the eyes and the drop of a hat. And then in the next section and then in the next scene he's dancing with he's dancing with his favorite call girl Etta.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a fun character.
Well, how do you balance roles as both a historian and a storyteller?
Mm. Um, it didn't work out as difficult as it sounds. Um, I tried to keep as much of the history accurate as I could, um, right down to weather. There's a scene in I think it's book three. I haven't looked at them in a while, and there's a terrible blizzard, and that blizzard actually happened, and I was able to find records of it and write about it, and it was absolutely devastating. Um, and the same thing for the prison. I looked at prison records. I looked at prisoner stories, read prisoner stories. Um, that's that's kind of the way I went with it. Now where the writer's license came in was of course with dialogue
Yeah,
because you have no idea what they said or when they said or who they said it to. Um, except in a few instances of mine, I was very fortunate that my cousins, the Courneya brothers, uh, exploits made the media a lot. They were always doing something that was worth being put in the paper. Um, not
that's
always
good for you.
accurately, not always reported accurately, because there was a lot of yellow journalism back then. It was the news industry back then was super competitive, and the hottest story is what sold. So if you could embellish it and make it
Yeah,
more saleable, there was no compunction for them not to do that. But if you sifted through the the extras, you could still find the kernels of truth that were actually in what actually happened.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So that actually was pretty good. But yeah, that's it. The writer's license mostly came through with, yes, a dialogue and a bit with setting up some scenes that would have been generic, but I specifically put the characters in the scene to give them something to do to make it relevant,
yeah,
like the land rush. I we have no idea if the Courneya brothers went to Bone Steel to witness the land rush, but I put them there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't they in Deadwood for a time too?
They're only time they're ever really in Deadwood. They were in Deadwood a few times for court.
Uh,
They would hold them. They would hold prisoners back then in either Sioux Falls or Pierre or Chamberlain, which is near the river, near the Missouri River. But if circuit court was going to be in Deadwood, if the judge was going to be in Deadwood before coming east, they put them on a train, take them, send them all the way to Deadwood.
wow.
Yeah, have their trial, stay in the slam overnight out there, have their trial, and then send them back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, how did the story change from when you started writing it? How you envisioned it to be? Were there any surprises along the way?
It didn't really change a lot because I mapped it out pretty carefully. I really had a roadmap to follow. I stuck to it pretty close. Um, some of the details did change. I expanded, like I say, expanded the land. The land rush actually was unexpected, and I got a lot of good material out of that. Um, I knew I was going to do Leavenworth. I knew they were. I discovered that they actually did try to. They didn't jailbreak. They were not successful, but they did try to jump the train a couple of times, but on their way to prison.
Hmm.
Um, two of them escaped out the bathroom window, but they got caught.
Yeah.
Two different times. Yeah, they tried to escape out the bathroom window, but they got caught.
How do you handle scenes that are emotionally heavy or historically complex?
You just work through them.
Yeah.
Historically complex. What I found the most difficult thing was being culturally sensitive
Yeah.
without sounding modern. I had to be very careful to not be culturally sensitive, but to not bring in any of the things that we've learned in the last 40, 50 years. Um, so that was tricky because at the time was very culturally insensitive to the blacks, to the natives, to the Chinese, the Asians. Um, and I do show that
Yeah.
without going overboard.
Uh, well, have you gotten any reader feedback from any of your stories?
Yes, I did actually. I've had mostly positive. Actually, I wouldn't mind if somebody gave me some negative feedback because you can always learn from somebody else.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had very good um, feedback. I actually had a gentleman this week tell me that he had never and very well read. This guy's very well read. He's always got a book in his hand, and he's retired, and that's all he does is read. And he said, I've never read a Western before in my life. Yours is the first one, and I probably will now read more.
Well, that's
So
pretty
that's
cool.
great. Yeah, got him
Cool.
interested in the genre. So you got a new fan.
Yay.
I see one of the questions you got there is what was the hardest scene for me to write?
Yeah.
Um, hmm. Without giving too much away, I'd have to say um, what happened to Philip was hard to write because I loved the character so much and I like what I did with him.
Yeah.
And that was a hard one. That was a hard one. I can't say much more without. I'll say it was an appropriate end for him,
Yeah.
um, and it was a true end because it was documented in the media of the time. But it was a tough one. It was a tough
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Other than your ancestors, do you have a favorite historical figure from the time period
Uh,
that's in the stories?
that's in the stories.
Hmm.
Ooh. Hmm. Seth Bullock.
Yeah.
Seth Bullock. Seth ran them in. Seth ran when Leavenworth was built. They were among the first prisoners transferred to the new prison from Sioux Falls, and Seth Bullock accompanied them with, I think there was a total of 34 prisoners transferred on the train, um, in one group to Leavenworth, and Seth Bullock oversaw the transfer. So they actually met Seth Bullock.
Whoa.
When my husband and I went to Deadwood on our research trip a couple of years ago, we went to the Mount Moriah Cemetery, and we were just happened to be by Wild Bill's grave, checking out, taking pictures.
Yeah.
And a tour group came through with a tour guide, and he was talking about the history of the cemetery and that. And he was saying, well, if you want, telling his group, he's like, well, if you want to go and see Seth Bullock's grave, it's up this way and around this way. It was way up a high hill, and it was a bloody hot day, so we weren't going to go that far. Um, but I overheard him, and I just couldn't resist. I walked over and said, Seth Bullock ran my cousins in, and he looked at me, and I showed him the paperwork. I had the binder with me with the newspaper clippings, and he's like, said, and I've been doing this. I've been a tour guide here for, I don't think it was 10 or 15 years, and he said, I have never, never encountered anyone that actually had a real connection to any of the famous people in this cemetery.
Oh
Oh, that's pretty cool.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think historical fiction has a role in correcting or expanding our understanding of history?
Yes, because you can make it interesting and entertaining. History in school sucks.
Yeah.
And I took history all the way through high school, and I didn't mind it. Very different history, I'm sure, than what was taught in the States. We did actually my final my final essay for my final year in high school to graduate from the high school history class was on the Kennedy assassination, of all things, American history.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think storytelling is a much better way to teach people history than the dry stuff that you get in school when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Um, it's storytelling history, if you do it right, can be riveting, because when you read the stuff that they give you in class, it's just memorizing names and dates for the most part. When you tell the story, you get a feel for what was actually happening back then, what people wore, what people ate, how they talked, where they went, what they smelled.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sure that the land rush. If you were taught the land rush in high school, you would be told that there were 50,000 settlers. They were drawing lots for the properties. They'd tell you the size of the properties, and probably not a whole heck of a lot more. It's just that they
Yeah.
came from the east, came with their possessions, looking for a new life. But could you imagine, as a story, I got into it as a story, these people, 50,000 people, probably 60 or 80,000 horses and cattle, um, wagon trains miles long, yeah. And then they end up here. But can you imagine what that campsite smelled like?
Oh,
you know, and no running water, nothing, like no amenities, nothing like that. Can you
yeah.
imagine a city of 50,000 people with all those live farm animals and no amenities for
Yeah.
humans or animals?
Yeah.
That's the stuff they don't teach you in school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any stereotypes about the Old West that you aim to challenge in your books?
Yes, the stereotype of the Native American, I definitely tried to change that, make them more show that there really aren't a lot of what they were going through is what a lot of people were going through. Didn't matter what their ethnic background was. They were going through hard. They're having hard times. They were looking out for their family. They had family loyalty. Um, and when something went bad, they if they had a bad experiences or hard times, they suffered. Um, Other than that, other stereotype. Now, really, the characters that I had in the book, other stereotypes, they were kind of stereotypical. Jack Sully really was a stereotypical cattle rustler,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I know. But then his wife Mary, who was native, wasn't just a native, the native wife that the white guy married to get access to land. He, she actually was a mover and shaker in the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think Western fiction continues to resonate with readers today?
Why? It's romance. It's a romantic. It goes back to a romantic time, the Old West. Simpler time in some ways.
Yeah,
Uh, Very full characters. Very well rounded, interesting characters. Um, Very strong characters. A lot of resilience and people that I mean, even if they weren't doing the right thing for the right reason, you could still look at them and say, damn it, they're out there doing it. They're doing
yeah,
something that maybe you wouldn't get away with now,
yeah,
or 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 they were the first ones to do something.
yeah,
um, but yeah, I think I think the Western resonates with people because it's everybody has their own idea of how the old West was, and we do have the stereotypes from Hollywood. Some are horribly inaccurate, some of them are not too bad.
yeah,
um but for better for worse, it was a time that a lot of people seem to resonate with, and probably especially in North America, a lot of people had ancestors that were there.
Hmm. What makes a great Western protagonist in your point of view?
Ooh. They have to be very resilient. They have to be intelligent. Even if they don't sound or act it, they are.
Yeah,
A good example of that would be Claude Cournoyer. Claude had a physical handicap, very serious one, because of injury that I don't know how it happened. So I put it in the first book that he got a severe head injury um, during a rustling operation. In reality, nobody really knows how it happened, but he definitely did have. If you see his mugshot from Leavenworth, you can actually see a divot in his skull where there's a chunk of skull missing,
wow,
and he was partially paralyzed because of it.
dang,
So he would play the fool, but he was very smart. Of the three of them, I think he was the brightest. I
wow,
really do. Yeah, he was very well educated. Very well educated. He could speak three languages. He could speak Lakota, English, and some French because his dad was half French and his grandfather was fully French Canadian.
yeah,
He could read and write, which was a lot more than a lot of people could do in the 1910s, 20s. Um, and but like he never got credit for anything. Everybody thought he was just an old drunk Indian, but
Yeah.
and a lot of yeah, okay, he drank. They all did. Everybody did
Yeah.
back then. Didn't matter what color you were, you drank. Most of them drank. Um, but he would get accused of being a falling down drunk a lot, which was really, in actuality, he was handicapped. He was partially paralyzed down the left side, so of course he looked like he was staggering all the time because
Yeah.
he had issues. Yeah.
Are all the characters in your stories actual historical figures, or did you invent any to help
Oh, I
progress
invented.
the
I invented lots of them. I invented lots of them. Yeah, several members of the gang are invented. Um, some whole scenes. Well, everybody that the brothers encountered and during the land rush, any encounter that they had with a person in the land in the in the encampment, they're all fictional.
Okay.
Yeah, because nobody knows what the no, like I said, nobody knows if they actually even went there. So
Yeah.
yeah, um, most of the characters that they encountered in Leavenworth, at least by name, were real.
That's it.
I actually looked up records of people that of inmates that would have been there at the same time.
Oh.
Mhm.
What's one thing you think that the Western genre needs more of?
Mm. Hmm. Needs a champion. It needs a believable champion. Um, there have been a few that have done very well, like Louis L'Amour. He's not around anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
A lot of the greats are gone, and some of the ones that have tried to pick up from where they left off haven't really done a good job. I think
Yeah.
I think a lot more could be done, particularly when it comes to Hollywood and movies. I really don't think they've come a heck of a long ways
No, I don't think so
from
either.
the spaghetti westerns. Really, there's so much more that they could do
Yeah.
rather than just repeating the old tropes and the old storylines. You know, the bang bang shoot 'em up. You know,
Yeah.
gunfight at high noon. There could be a lot more said. I mean, we're getting there. Killers of the Flower Moon was
Yeah.
brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
But we need more. We need more of that, and less of 310 to Yuma.
Yeah.
You know, not that the 310 to Yuma wasn't good. It was great action flick,
Yeah.
but that kind of story's kind of been done to death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Hmm.
How did it feel to win the Literary Titan Book Award?
I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I like that's the first thing that I the first competition that I'd ever entered
Yeah.
with the first Western book that I ever wrote,
Yeah.
and to have it picked out of all the possibilities, and like I know I was up against people who have much more experience than I do. Um, I was absolutely blown away and so appreciative. It's nice to
Yeah.
be recognized. It's always nice to be recognized by your peers. It really means
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Did winning it change how you see your own work?
It gave me a boost. I will
Yeah.
say it encourages me to keep going. I was hemming and hawing about writing a prequel. And I'm like, well, I said and did everything. Is anybody going to really want to read more about these guys? And now I think maybe they do.
Yeah.
I think it might be something worth doing. Yeah.
Hmm. But what's next for you? What projects on the horizon now that you've completed the
Oh,
trilogy?
oh my goodness. Um, I have about 7 or 8 irons in the fire. I write a lot of different genres. I don't just do westerns. I do a lot of different things. I write local history, children's. Um, Again, like I said, I'm seriously thinking about doing a prequel showing. I always try to bring a little bit of my home country into my writing. I'm a proud
Yeah.
Canadian. Sorry, we all say
Yes.
sorry. And the prequel will be the origin of the family and how the first Cournoyer, who was French Canadian voyageur, fur trader,
Yeah.
um, came to the American West and settled. And where he settled, he ended up more Yankton, east of the river. Um, how where he settled and how he got started, and there's quite a bit of interesting stuff. There's a very interesting character that he traded with that I discovered recently, courtesy of the Getty's Historical Society. And this guy was called Old Papineau, another French guy, and extremely colorful. He's going to be interesting. He's going to be a real interesting, fun character to write about. He's the main reason why I'm
Yeah.
thinking of doing this prequel. Once I discovered this guy, it's like, oh my god, is this for real? Like, quite a guy. But so it's going to be interesting for me to figure to put this into place and work out how this white French Canadian guy who marries a Native American woman, um, why did he do it? Did he
Yeah.
really want to stay in the States? Was he just looking for a land? Was he just looking for a land grab himself? Because that back then the native women were getting the reservation land. It was in their name, it was in the woman's name. Um, how would he justify being part of the destruction, the downfall of the Lakota? Because he was there during the buffalo slaughter. He was there during the extinction of the beaver. He was part of it.
Yeah.
But then his children are half Lakota. So how does he feel about that? About what he did to his own kids' ancestors?
Yeah.
Uh, it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be an interesting one, and it's going to have to be handled differently than the
Yeah.
trilogy was. Yeah.
Is there any other time periods or story arcs you're interested in exploring other than the prequel?
In the Western genre, or
Well,
just in general?
in general.
In general, I am collaborating with a family member of mine right now on a children's book. I have three other local history children's books that the manuscripts are done, but they're only in first draft. They need to be edited.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to digging into them. And I have a children's picture book about one of my cats. That's just going to be something fun to do. And
Yeah.
actually, I kind of like the kids' adventure. I'm starting to kind of get into the kids' adventure early readers chapter books, and I might have a go at doing a western
Young adult
that
westerns.
age group for that age group for age about 6 to 9, 10 years old.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. As far as novels go, other than the prequel, that's plenty on my plate right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't thought about another. I had one that I was ruminating with. It was a true crime. Unfortunately, when I shot it past my publisher's legal team, they said don't touch it with a
Uh,
10-foot pole because too many of the protagonist and several of the key characters in it are still alive,
oh.
which means you're going to get a whole bunch of libel defamation issues, which was
Yeah.
disappointing
So
because it could have been interesting, but no, it's just not appropriate right now.
yeah.
So that was my other possibility. So it died it died before it got started. So I'm just going to stick to the prequel right now, I think.
Alrighty. Well, what do you hope readers take away from your stories, especially this newest one?
Oh, I hope that they take away. Oh, I hope they're entertained. First of all, I hope they're entertained and they enjoy it. I hope it's a page turner for them. I hope they understand a little bit more about both the settlers and the cowboys and the Native American experience back then, and cultural changes, and that nothing is static. Everything's
Yeah.
always in flux. Everything changes, and it's up to us to determine the direction of the change.
Yeah. Well, finally, where can everybody go to find your work?
Well, the best place would be Amazon.
Yeah.
They're on Amazon. The books are on Amazon, both as paperbacks and as ebooks. Um, if anybody's traveling and they want to visit 1880s town, they're there in South Dakota.
Huh.
And in my community, I have a couple of places where they are, but I think Amazon is going to be your best bet. I see I got a few questions here. Do you mind if I
Sure.
you got a minute?
Yeah.
Um,
Wait a minute.
Question is, do I have brothers that I could draw writing experience from? No, I'm an only child. I grew up on a farm as an only female child, so I did everything that the boys were supposed to do.
Yeah.
I was the farm help. Um, but my dad came from a family of 13. I have 56 or 7 first cousins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so yeah, lots of experience with male first cousins, and yeah, so but to write about them, no, not really. Not really.
Yeah.
Um on another one here, I see we got heroic figures like Wyatt Earp, Annie Oakley, Buffalo Bill, etc. Um do I have a favorite historical person from that genre? Not really. They're all interesting. They're all interesting in their own way.
Yeah.
I find they're all different enough that they're all interesting in their own way. Don't really have a favorite. Um,
That's good.
hmm And so, how do I create a character from scratch when there's nothing there before? I have a little cheat sheet that I work with. Starts very simply with appearance. Right? Like
Yeah.
hair color, skin color, eye color, male or female, clothing, economics, background. Were they an orphan? Did they come from a big family? Were they wealthy? Were they poor? Did they struggle? Do they have any physical issues? And then I use a name generator to come up with a name. Yeah.
I've done that a time or two.
hmm hmm So that's how it starts, and then you just give them a personality. The personality seems to take a life of its own on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any more questions. Is there anything do you want people to know about you? Or,
About well, I hope you enjoy the book. It's been quite an experience. Took me places I never thought I'd ever see or have a reason to visit South Dakota, and I absolutely loved it. That's what I like. That's my favorite part of writing. You want to know what my favorite part of writing is? The research.
yeah.
The research, especially if I get to go somewhere, to travel somewhere and absorb the culture. That is absolutely my favorite part of writing, and I hope to do a lot more of it in the future.
All right. We look forward to it.
Thank
Seeing
you.
what you come up with next.
Great. Yeah.
So, folks, that wraps up this episode of the Dusty Trails and Tall Tales podcast. Thank you, Joanne, for being here with us and for coming back and sharing your stories.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come back. It's great.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen her latest release, be sure you check it out on Amazon. And we'll see you next time, folks. Have a nice day.
Bye, everybody.